Target inside compound. Range 1,400.
1,400.
Wind 0.5. Send it.
Delta 1 is down.
Code red!
Jack could use the Avada Kedavra curse, but he preferred to show off with a sniper rifle. He used a small windmill on the balcony to calculate the wind direction and speed. He fired a test shot at the target building to adjust his aim. After fine-tuning the scope, he pulled the trigger again. Once everything was confirmed, he pointed the barrel toward the building entrance and patiently waited for the president to appear. Jackal was a mysterious professional assassin known for taking on assassination missions that paid handsomely. His targets were often the most enigmatic and dangerous figures behind power and wealth. This time his target was the President of France. Jackal patiently waited for the moment when the president would step into the revolving door, catching the bodyguards off guard, and then struck decisively. Just like that, the President of France became the former president. The scene immediately descended into chaos. The bodyguards hastily grabbed binoculars to search for the sniper's position. Before long, they spotted the glint of a rifle reflecting light from a distant building. But they didn't know that Jackal had deliberately stayed at his original position after taking the shot to let them find him. Calmly, he dismantled the sniper rifle and carefully packed it away. After erasing all traces at the scene, he planted a time bomb under a bed reserved for police officers. As Jack drove out of the parking lot, he happened to encounter a convoy of police and counter-terrorism units speeding toward the hotel, sirens blaring. He glanced at them casually, then drove to another nearby parking lot, switched to a new car, and disappeared. After storming into the hotel room, the counter-terrorism unit found the time bomb under the bed, but it was already too late. At the same time, the old car Jack had abandoned in the parking lot exploded, erasing all traces. As a lone wolf, Jackal had grown increasingly isolated outside of his work. He always operated alone in the dark underworld, his appearance constantly changing with no one ever knowing his true face. This time his target was the CEO of a tech company. Jackal disguised himself as a janitor and easily infiltrated the company. However, the life of an assassin always carried unexpected risks. A female employee happened to catch him attaching a silencer to his gun. The noise he made while dealing with her drew the attention of a security guard.
Du hast den Staubsauger laufen lassen.
But Jack couldn't speak French. Realizing his cover was blown, Jackal immediately opened fire, killing the guard. The director in the adjacent office hurried toward the emergency stairwell, but Jackal remained unfazed, calmly aiming downward. When the target appeared around the corner, Jackal fired a shot, hitting him in the leg. Wounded, the director desperately begged for his life. Jack noticed that the man's femoral artery had been ruptured. He wouldn't live much longer, so he didn't waste any more time firing additional shots. The gunfight inside the office had already exposed Jackal's position, and the alarm blared throughout the building. Jack made his way to the rooftop, tossed a few smoke bombs into the crowd below, and then used a rope to rappel down and escape with ease. Jackal's career was full of legendary tales. No one knew his past, and no one dared question his abilities. Some said he was a cold-blooded killer forged by war. Others believed he was like a prairie wolf born with an instinct to kill. Regardless of the rumors, he always exuded a terrifying calmness, as if he had never experienced a flicker of emotion. The assassination of the president captured the attention of European nations. An MI6 intelligence agent named Bianca was invited to join the investigation. When she heard that the sniper had fired from a distance of 3,815 meters, she was utterly astonished, because up until now the world record for a sniper kill with a rifle was 3,540 meters. Since no weapon was found at the scene, it was concluded that the assassin had carried the rifle away with him. The hotel's surveillance cameras had captured Jack's silhouette leaving. The sniper rifle had clearly been disassembled and packed into his suitcase. Bianca requested an examination of the suitcase's dimensions. The TAC-50 scope alone was 737 millimeters long, and the rifle body itself was over 1 meter. If it had been placed in a suitcase, part of it would certainly have protruded. For an assassin capable of killing from such a distance, his weapon was practically his second life. There was no way he would leave it behind. This meant the rifle had been custom-made with the barrel divided into 2 detachable parts. Upon hearing this, the French security personnel immediately protested.
Barrel in 2 parts is the gunmaker's holy grail. If the rifling were out to the tiniest fraction, it would compromise the shot. It's impossible.
However, Bianca had learned from several sources about a gunsmith named Norman Stoke who had spent years trying to create this miracle. Since the assassination in Stockholm in 2018, he had gone into hiding. But she had a way to track him down. The gunsmith builds the weapons and the assassin buys the weapons from the gunsmith. They planned to use that clue to find the man who killed the president. At that time, Jackal had already sold his villa in Germany and crossed the border into England. He logged into the underground assassins network from an internet cafe. While waiting for the remaining payment for the presidential assassination, a stranger suddenly contacted him claiming to be a fan. The person said there was a project Jackal might be interested in, but it couldn't be discussed online. They needed to meet in person. Jackal set his price. A meeting fee of $1 million, half paid upfront, the other half after the meeting. Regardless of whether negotiations succeeded, the fee was non-refundable. The woman followed Jackal's instructions and went alone to a cabin by the lake. She offered Jackal $10 million to assassinate the leader of an organization. Jackal smiled and said that if she multiplied that amount by 10, maybe they could have a conversation. The woman was visibly shocked by the figure $100 million. She said she would need to consult her superiors. When she turned around, she realized Jackal had already disappeared without a sound. Upon returning home, Jackal turned on his computer to check his bank account but realized that 24 hours had passed, and the 3.75 million euros payment for the assassination still hadn't been transferred. He contacted the client who had hired him, but he only received 2 words in response. Not happening. Jackal couldn't believe there was someone in this world bold enough to cheat him out of his fee. He immediately contacted his bank. 14 days earlier, 3.75 million euros had been deposited into his account. He instructed the bank. Find out the origin of that money. His wife Nuria noticed that he seemed troubled.
Someone I've been working with has, they've misunderstood their obligations to me.
Is it money?
Yeah.
A lot?
Yeah.
Que hijo de la gran puta.
It's not just the money. So if it were to get out that someone had got away without paying me, it hurts the brand, which is a problem.
And if he steals from you, he steals from your family, which is me and Carlito. So you tell me where he lives and I get the money he owes.
She had no idea about Jackal's true identity as an assassin and assumed it was just a simple financial dispute. Jackal quickly turned down her offer to help. In another development, the person in charge of investigating the assassination of the president contacted his informant named Allison. Her code name was Sparrow. Her ex-husband was the gunsmith named Norman. In the entire world, he was the only one capable of crafting a sniper rifle that could take down a target from 400 meters away and could be disassembled and reassembled. Bianca had once saved Allison's life during a previous mission. However, Allison was currently in trouble. Her daughter Emma had joined a protest that clashed with the police and was detained. Allison hoped that Bianca could help release her daughter in exchange for revealing Norman's whereabouts. Unexpectedly, Emma suddenly died in custody due to illness. Bianca was forced to trick Allison into handing over Norman's phone number first before informing the police to release her daughter. At the same time, in a skyscraper in New York, USA, the woman who had paid $10 million to hire Jackal for an assassination was reporting to her boss. The boss wanted to find the best assassin available, but the figure of $100 million was clearly far beyond their initial expectations. However, their assassination target was none other than the world's richest billionaire, Elon Musk. If they could succeed in killing him, then even paying $100 million would be worth it. Why did they want to kill the world's richest billionaire? It all had to do with an upcoming project of his called River. Rumor had it that this project could usher in an era of financial transparency and global economic fairness. Opinions were divided. Some believed it could bring about global economic equality, while others feared it would plunge the world into unimaginable chaos. In an interview, the host asked why the world's richest billionaire cared so much about economic fairness. Musk replied that everyone should care about economic fairness. Money should flow like water. Currently, it flows into the pockets of the rich and stops there instead of flowing into a reservoir to be saved for future generations. The only way to break this cycle is through complete financial transparency.
Do you want everyone to see into your bank accounts?
Well, I've got nothing to hide. But there are people out there with a lot to hide. And River is going to...
Hearing this, the boss became determined. Even if it meant spending $100 million, they had to eliminate Musk before he could launch River. That day, while Jack was celebrating his son's birthday with his family, he received a message from the bank. Identity verification for the payer had failed. They could only trace the funds back to an account in Munich, Germany. Jack told his wife that there was an urgent matter at work and he had to leave. After his wife dropped him off at the airport, he took his bag to a different level and left by taxi. He went to a secret safe house and selected a new passport to create a new identity for himself. However, while he was on his way to the airport in a taxi, his wife, who had just bought flowers by the roadside, happened to spot him. She immediately called Jack, but her call went straight to voicemail, making her start to suspect her husband. In another development, while reviewing surveillance footage, Bianca noticed Jack's backpack. Although he had torn off the brand label from the bag, when zoomed in it resembled the image of two mountain peaks. In the footage capturing Jack's assassination of the tech company CEO, it was clear that he used a small caliber 9mm Browning pistol. Since he clearly could have chosen a weapon with greater firepower, why would an assassin opt for a small caliber handgun? After some investigation, Bianca confirmed that the assassin was British. The 9mm Browning pistol had remained a standard issue weapon for several British military units up until a few years ago. As for the backpack, it was produced by a small startup company in the UK. The model, called the Perfect Pack, had only been launched on the market 8 months ago and was sold exclusively in the UK. Normally, snipers have spotters to assist them, but this assassin was different. Both times he carried out his missions alone. It was likely that he had served in the British military. They could begin investigating his identity from this angle. On his way, Jack received a message from the American woman. The two agreed to meet at a park because the sum of $100 million was too large, and since this was their first collaboration, they couldn't pay him $50 million upfront. Instead, they could only give him $20 million as a starting fee. Jack thought it over for a moment and agreed. He also planned to retire after completing a few more major contracts. The woman instructed Jack that the target had to be eliminated before the 28th of this month, the day River was set to launch. Otherwise, the deal would be cancelled.
In future communications, we'll use the codename Rodan for the target.
Rodan. Very good.
And we'll need a codename for you, too.
Why not the Jackal?
Why not?
Jack disguised himself as his own representative and went to the bank to investigate the origin of the 3.75 million euros.
Mr. Thirsk, so the payment was made from a company account, Hellelinia. I'm afraid we're not authorized to give out that information, but the National Company Register is available online.
After searching online, Jack discovered that the parent company of the one involved was Archford Trust, managed by a man named Hans Lang. In another development, Bianca led a special forces team in a raid on the gunsmith Norman's hideout, but he had already set traps in advance, causing heavy casualties to the team. Bianca chased after him, firing repeatedly, but Norman managed to hijack a car and escape. However, after calling for backup, Bianca found a suitcase that Norman had abandoned in the bushes during his escape. The contents inside were clearly very important to him. Back at headquarters, Bianca was reprimanded by her superiors. They had concealed the girl's death without reporting it for more than 36 hours, a clear violation of regulations. In this operation, 2 members of the Special Forces team were killed. All of this had been based solely on Bianca's assumption that Norman had supplied weapons to the assassin. The superiors ordered her to stop her actions and cease the investigation. However, Bianca brought the suitcase that Norman had left behind into the conference room, placed it on the table, opened it, and began assembling its contents.
I took this with me through customs this morning. I had no idea I was bringing a sniper rifle with me, and neither did security. The sniper took the weapon he used to kill Fest with him, and this is how he did it. All thanks to Norman Stoke.
The assassin had used it to assassinate the president. Bianca's colleague had gone to a special forces unit in England that trained snipers and obtained a list of outstanding marksmen who fit their criteria. However, when they mentioned they were looking for a sniper capable of hitting a target from a distance of 3,815 meters, the trainer said he had never seen anyone achieve such a feat, at least not among those on the list. Before leaving the training camp, no one had ever managed to pull that off. In this operation, 2 of Bianca's colleagues had died. She was the only survivor, which led to her being summoned by the authorities for investigation. Although her salary was not low, her family's financial situation was far from ideal. It could not be ruled out that she had been bribed to betray her teammates. In the world of intelligence, anyone could be lying. Therefore, until a thorough investigation is conducted, no one can be trusted. After the meeting, her superior called Bianca outside for a private talk. There was definitely a mole in this operation. Otherwise, Norman could not have set up the bomb trap in advance. After the investigation, she would also have to watch out for internal threats and ensure that all intelligence information remained strictly confidential. Bianca went to find Allison, her good friend, to apologize for having hidden the truth about her daughter's death. Allison was devastated. She had always considered Bianca her closest friend. After parting ways with Bianca, Allison returned home. Her husband discovered that she had secretly taken a photo of his phone and leaked Norman's phone number to someone else. Allison tried to run away but was caught by her husband. Meanwhile, Emma, suspicious that her husband was hiding something, began searching for evidence after she got home. She found a safe hidden behind a closet partition but didn't have the code to open it. Upon studying the house's floor plan, Emma realized there seemed to be a hidden space behind a mirror. She immediately called her family to help her find a way inside. Jackal, who was still unaware of the fire that had broken out in his backyard, had just received a $20 million deposit from the Americans. She then informed him about the target's whereabouts and urged Jack to act quickly before River was released. However, Jack said he still had unfinished business in Munich. Once he handled it, he would proceed with the mission. This time, Jack disguised himself as a driver. He subdued an actual driver, took his glasses, and transformed himself into a motorcycle taxi driver. His target was a man named Hans Lang. Although Hans Lang was heavily guarded by a team of bodyguards, Jack managed to shoot the bodyguard in the passenger seat with a single shot, then abruptly drove the car into a narrow alley. After receiving a call from their boss, the bodyguards immediately began their pursuit. Both sides raced through the streets of Munich at dizzying speeds. Eventually, Jack used roadside obstacles to block his pursuers. He stopped the car and turned to look at Hans Lang. Hans Lang clearly realized what was happening. He hastily swore that he would pay Jack the remaining balance and would give him any amount of money he wanted. But this wasn't about money. Hans Lang frantically tried to smash the door to escape, but no matter how hard he hit it, the door wouldn't break. Jackal calmly took clothes out of the car trunk, changed, and threw a timed bomb into the vehicle. When Hans Lang's bodyguards arrived, they were greeted by a deafening explosion. Watching everything unfold from a distance, Jackal casually turned and walked away. However, he didn't know that his backyard had already caught fire. His wife and family had broken into the safe and discovered his secret workshop inside. Seeing the mask molds, the stacks of passports and suitcases filled with cash from various countries, his wife was utterly shocked. Jack also witnessed the scene through his phone. For the first time, he found himself facing an incredibly difficult decision. Should he go home to put out the fire, or should he head to America to assassinate the world's richest billionaire and collect a $100 million reward? What happens when an assassin's true identity is exposed? Jackal shot a policeman in the head and then tossed the gun to a nearby truck driver. Under the driver's bewildered gaze, Jack fired another shot. He hadn't planned for any of this. Initially, it was just a minor accident. His car had bumped into the back of the truck. But the truck driver refused to let it go and called the police. During the inspection, Jack's identity was exposed. Jackal staged the scene to look like a shootout between the truck driver and the police, with both dying in the process. The real reason Jack had been distracted while driving was because he saw his wife discovering his secret workshop. Jack called his wife, asking her to meet him in Paris, France. When the time came, he promised he would explain everything to her. The bald man was about to visit a sniper from the list to check on him. However, Bianca asked him to send her the address instead. She wanted to go by herself. The bald man explained that he wasn't the mole. Everyone was extremely tense at the moment, and their superiors had ordered checks on their personal phones and emails. But clearly Bianca only trusted herself. The former sniper had graduated from sniper training school many years ago. Seeing the list, he recounted the situation of each person on it. When he learned that Bianca was looking for a sniper who could take down a target from a distance of 3,815 meters, he said he had never heard of such a person. Even if someone like that existed, it wouldn't be any of the people on the list. However, he mentioned hearing about a legendary figure in the sniper world named Duan who might be capable of such a feat. But apparently during a mission 10 years ago, Duan's entire team was killed in an explosion. Bianca didn't fully believe his words. She contacted the bald man again and asked him to investigate the mission in which Duan supposedly died 10 years ago. Meanwhile, Jack's BMW had been damaged earlier in a collision. Upon arriving at the hotel, he immediately removed the license plates and wiped all traces of himself from the car. Worried that the vehicle might be discovered, he even took a car cover from the neighboring vehicle and used it to hide his own. Next, Jack patiently waited for his wife to arrive. He locked his handgun inside the safe and put on his wedding ring. Not long after, his wife knocked on the door and entered. Without saying a word, she slapped Jack across the face. Jackal confessed that he had deceived her even before their marriage, but his love for his wife and child was genuine. He was afraid that if he told her the truth about himself, he would lose her.
What is the truth? What do you do, Charles?
I'm a troubleshooter.
What does that mean?
So, big companies, multinationals, when they have a problem, they send me in to solve it.
A problem?
Yeah.
Do you kill people?
No. No, I don't kill people.
Jack explained that he worked in commercial espionage. Because it was illegal, he sometimes had to use fake identities. Occasionally, he also had to use money to bribe others. Many of the people he investigated were billionaires and extremely dangerous, so he sometimes had to carry a gun for self-defense. Emma, persuaded by his sweet words, then became worried for his safety. Jack said that if she could just give him 2 more weeks, he would retire from this life for good.
In a couple of weeks, this is all going to be over. It's going to be done. I'm through. I meant that. I'm done with it. And once this job is done, we will have enough money to live the life that we want to live. And it'll be a great life. It'll be a great life. Please believe me.
How can I believe you? Tell me. How?
Because I'm here. And the only reason that I'm here in Paris, in this hotel, in this fucking room, is because my life is with you. And if I don't have that, then I don't have anything.
I like you like this. Con sangre.
Oh,
Con sangre en la vena.
At the same time, a powerful American financial tycoon was discussing Jack. Although Jack had accepted their assignment, he had killed a man in Munich, causing them to worry that he might not complete the assassination mission. A woman explained that while she understood time was running out, it would be impossible to find a hitman more skilled than Jack. Just then, new information arrived. Jack had killed the man because he had refused to pay him for a previous hit. Upon hearing this, the tycoon suddenly changed his view of Jack. Jack had returned to Munich, where the police were hunting him everywhere to collect an unpaid debt. To the tycoon, this demonstrated Jack's commitment to honoring his deals. However, to be cautious, he still sent the woman to stay close to Jack and monitor his progress. In another development, Larry killed his wife after being betrayed by her. He then used Allison's phone to text Bianca and lure her into a meeting. When Bianca arrived, Larry emerged from the shadows and attacked her with a dagger. After a fierce struggle, Bianca managed to escape along the riverbank. She happened to encounter some passers-by, preventing Larry from striking again. While calling headquarters for backup, Bianca also lured Larry toward a bridge ahead. Headquarters contacted Vince, the closest agent, to assist Bianca. Together with the police, they cornered Larry by the riverbank. However, Larry reacted quickly, leaping onto a small boat passing by and making his escape. When Bianca and the police reached Allison's house, they found her already dead. Larry, now a fugitive, clearly had no intention of letting Bianca go. He had someone track down Bianca's home address and used her daughter to try to force her into submission. Unexpectedly, Bianca shot him in the thigh. She didn't kill Larry, instead intending to extract information from him about the whereabouts of the gunsmith Norman. On an island in Tandestonia, the world's richest billionaire Elon Musk was informed by his subordinates that someone had hired a professional assassin to target him. However, Musk clearly had no intention of canceling the events planned for this trip. He wanted to see if the professional assassin could breach the island's thick layers of security to kill him. But Jack had no intention of going to the island to assassinate him. After arriving in Tallinn, Jack headed to the exhibition center where Musk would hold his event, searching for a suitable location to carry out the assassination. In the first phase, he infiltrated and accessed behind the soundproof walls. Not long after, he reached the top partition area of the exhibition center. From there, he could see the main stage through a gap. At that moment, the floor beneath his feet suddenly gave way and he almost fell. Grabbing hold of a cable, he managed to save himself. However, during the climb back up, his phone slipped from his pocket and fell. After the event ended, Jack didn't see anyone returning the phone. Since that phone was his only means of communication with his employer, he couldn't afford to lose it. He found his phone in the middle of the stage. Before leaving, he memorized the name of the security guard, thinking he might need it when executing the assassination later. However, when Jack opened the door to his hotel room, he discovered an uninvited guest inside. Jackal turned around and locked the door behind him. He walked toward the woman, staring at her with a murderous look. The woman, unfazed, said that Jack had taken their $20 million but acted recklessly in Munich.
If I don't deliver, if you don't deliver, it will take extreme measures. You do not want to make enemies of these people. They're more powerful than you know. If you don't believe me, just ask Norman Stoke.
The woman sent to monitor Jack had no intention of interfering with his freedom. She said she would stay in Tallinn until he completed his mission, and if he needed anything related to the task, he could reach out to her. As they parted ways, Jack suddenly turned to glance at a group of elderly people fishing nearby. Among them was a woman with her leg in a cast, still engrossed in her fishing. Back at the hotel, Jack logged into a secure website to contact Norman, informing him that he needed a special gun. Norman sent Jack his phone number, and shortly after, Jack called him. Jack explained that he needed the help of a weapons master like Norman. However, before detailing his request, Jack asked if Norman had encountered anything unusual lately. Norman mentioned that he had dealt with a few uninvited guests recently, but assured Jack that he had taken care of them.
Right, and you're 100% secure now?
100%.
You know I don't like risks.
You know I don't either.
Distance to the target is 75 meters.
Not like you to get that snug.
Yeah, unfortunately, it's my only option.
What are the obstacles?
A metal detector and an ultra-sensitive scanner, but I've got an idea for that.
When do you need it?
Well, the job's in 5 days.
Norman said it was a bit difficult because his arm had been injured by those uninvited guests. He even joked that he couldn't wipe his own ass anymore. He admitted he couldn't complete the job alone within 5 days and had no assistance because he didn't trust anyone.
Would you trust me?
Meanwhile, Bianca arrived at the hospital. After ordering all the police officers out of the room, she used a pillow to smother Larry's mouth. After doing this several times, she presented him with a choice. Either they would spare Norman's life or Larry would rot in prison. If he revealed Norman's whereabouts, they would release him so he could handle his wife's funeral arrangements. After several instances of suffocation, Larry finally couldn't take it anymore and told Bianca that Norman was in Budapest. He couldn't remember the exact address, only that it was in a small village a few kilometers from the airport. Norman lived in a white building next to a horse farm, and there was a cafe on the street corner. Back at headquarters, the bald man reported his investigation results to Bianca. Duan was a loner. He paid great attention to detail and was a naturally gifted sniper. His unit specialized in eliminating Taliban leaders, but in 2013 he was killed in an IED attack. Bianca was preparing to travel to Budapest with Vince. For security reasons, she privately met with her superior Osita Halcro to request authorization and logistical support. Meanwhile, Jack had already arrived in Budapest. Norman took him to his personal weapons cache where a wide array of firearms was displayed. Jack shared with Norman his idea of a weapon hidden inside a cast shoe. The cast shoe, made of plastic and polymer, could easily pass through metal detectors. However, since the gun barrel couldn't be made of plastic, they would have to use a lightweight alloy. The two of them began designing the gun parts on the computer, waiting for the 3D printer to produce them. While waiting, Jack asked Norman why his hand was injured. After hesitating for a moment, Norman explained that a group of English-speaking people had come after him in Belarus. A black woman had shot him in the hand. The weapon she used was a Glock 17. Hearing this, Jack grew serious, suspecting that she was from MI6. He didn't want Norman's troubles to interfere with his final mission. Norman claimed he had an informant inside MI6 who would warn him in advance, but Jack still looked deeply concerned.
You're an artist, my friend, and you've always been discreet. But if that changes...
The next day, the gun parts had finished printing. After removing the cast shoe, they could be assembled into a simple sniper rifle. Norman handed Jack a set of car keys and told him to drive to a nearby forest to test the gun. He also warned Jack that the plastic gun body was fragile and would only withstand about 7 or 8 shots. To be safe, Jack should minimize the number of test shots. Jack drove to a forest, hung a watermelon on a tree 75 meters away, and began test firing using plastic bullets to calibrate the rifle's sights. After confirming that everything was functioning properly, he loaded a metal bullet into the barrel. Satisfied with the new weapon after the tests, Jack headed back. On the way, he stopped by a cafe at a street corner for a drink. Suddenly, he noticed Bianca's car circling nearby. It turned out Bianca had located Norman's hideout and called in reinforcements to prepare for an assault, including cutting the power. Worried, Jack called Norman, but he was too drunk to hear his phone ringing. Norman hurriedly deleted the printing history from the computer. At that moment, Bianca and her team burst inside. Learning from past mistakes, Bianca had already arranged for her team to block all exits, easily subduing Norman. However, Norman stubbornly refused to reveal Jack's name. Bianca spotted Jack's backpack nearby and guessed he must be close, lying in wait. Realizing he had been betrayed by Larry, his so-called brother, Norman stood up. At that moment, he took a bullet from Jack meant for Bianca. While Jack was reloading, Bianca quickly took cover and signaled her team outside to surround him. Jack was pushed toward a stable. He mounted a white horse and fled. Bianca drove after him closely until Jack escaped into the forest. When the female driver got out of the car, she was shot, but fortunately she was wearing a bulletproof vest and wasn't seriously injured. Jack's gun had a limited number of shots. Surrounded on all sides, he could only flee in desperation. Finally, he leapt off a cliff into a lake to escape. Shortly after, Jack resurfaced downstream. Rain poured down heavily as he dragged his soaked body into a warehouse to take shelter. However, the warehouse owner discovered him and pointed a gun at his head. Jack tried to resist, but the man struck him with the butt of the gun, knocking him unconscious, and then hung him from the ceiling. While Jack was desperately trying to find a way to escape, the fat man suddenly let him go and even gestured for him to get lost. But just as Jack stood up, the man spotted the sniper rifle hidden in the haystack. It seemed like there was no way out this time. The fat man forced Jack back to his house, ignoring Jack's repeated gestures that he was willing to pay to settle everything. Due to the language barrier, the fat man couldn't understand what Jack was saying, but he clearly heard the word euro. He immediately called his brother.
Elkaptam a pajtába egy köcsögöt. Külföldi? Valami csúcsfegyver van nála, sose láttam még. Szerintem valami pénzről adóvá, de nem értem. Te a Lacika nálatok az ért angolul, nem?
Coincidentally, among the workers at Gabi's farm, there was someone named Alvaro who knew English. Alvaro came out to talk to Jack. When he realized Jack wanted to settle things with money, he reported it back to Gabi.
Azt mondta, hogy van pénze és fizetne.
Mondom neki, oda megyünk, és hogyha fizet, akkor esetleg el lesz simítva az ügynök.
We come now. You pay. Maybe problem go away.
Gabby immediately grabbed his weapon and prepared to head to his younger brother's farm. But before they could get far, the two were stopped by the police. The officer informed them that a foreign assassin had recently been spotted nearby.
Jár érte jutalom, ha megtaláljuk.
Nehogy a közelébe menjetek.
Hearing this, Gabby instantly knew he was about to get rich. But what he didn't know was that what awaited him was the abyss of death. Because while waiting for his brother, the fat man kept insisting Jack try the bread he had baked himself. Jack was struggling, unable to find a way to escape, when unexpectedly the opportunity presented itself. Just as Jack was packing his things to run, Gabby called the fat man, but there was no answer. Gabby left a message warning his brother to be careful because the foreigner was very dangerous. Little did he know that his brother had already stopped breathing long ago. Jack went outside and climbed into a truck, but no matter what he did, it wouldn't start. With no other choice, he switched to another one. He had just inserted the key when Gabby burst in. While Gabby and his companion went into the house to search, Jack quickly started the engine. The roar of the engine echoed loudly. Gabby rushed out of the house and pointed his gun at Jack, firing. In that life or death moment, Jack finally got the truck started. But because he couldn't lift his head to see the road, the vehicle crashed into the curb and got stuck in a pile of tires. Seeing this, Gabby lunged forward, intending to avenge his younger brother. But when he opened the truck door, Jackal had already vanished. A gunshot immediately rang out from beneath the vehicle. Jack stood up coldly under Alvaro's horrified gaze. Without hesitation, he finished off Gabby. Alvaro mustered all his courage to confront Jack, but his gun was loaded with blanks. There was no way he could fight back. His instincts told him to surrender, and so he obediently became a hostage. If Jack hadn't needed a driver and translator, Alvaro would have been shot long ago. With the muzzle of a gun pressed against him, Alvaro trembled as he drove, watching terrified birds scatter past the window. Jack suddenly felt a pang of regret for accepting this $100 million job. But there was no turning back now. His only choice was to try and survive this desperate situation. He snatched Alvaro's phone, hesitated for a moment, then decided to call his wife, confessing that he was in deep trouble. His voice trembled with emotion as he told her this might be their last phone call and asked her to take good care of their son.
Anyway, I just wanted to hear your voice because I'm not 100% sure that I'm going to be making it back.
Charles, you're scaring me.
What's wrong?
Charles?
I'm so sorry.
It should have been a heartbreaking and hopeless conversation, but to Jack's surprise, his wife didn't panic. Instead, she asked him directly where he was and what she could do to help. Her words reignited a flicker of hope in Jack. He immediately asked her to bring him a suitcase. She didn't hesitate at all, still believing that her husband was just a normal corporate agent, simply hoping he would complete the mission and come home safely. After the call ended, Alvaro drove Jack into the city. Listening to the radio broadcasting news of his manhunt, watching police cars rush past with sirens blaring, Jack fell into deep thought. Elsewhere, Bianca received the report and arrived at the crime scene at the farm. Police informed her that they had found numerous fingerprints matching those discovered at Norman's hideout, enough evidence to prove that the fugitive was Jack. As Bianca was preparing to resume the chase, she got a call from her superior. He ordered her to return to headquarters immediately. The mission to capture Jack had been elevated to top priority, and the operation was now officially named Anubis. They wanted her back to lead it. Although the timing couldn't have been worse, the order was non-negotiable. Bianca reluctantly agreed, but her departure inadvertently gave Jack the chance to escape. As a top assassin, Jack should never have shown mercy, but Alvaro's words ended up saving his life.
You have good man face.
Say that again.
You have good man face.
That sentence kept echoing in Jack's mind, bringing back memories of the past. He had ruthlessly taken countless lives. On one mission, his superiors had even ordered him to massacre an entire innocent village. From that moment on, he knew he was no longer a good man. Jack told Alvaro to stop the truck under a bridge and ordered him to place both hands on the steering wheel. Jack hesitated, unsure whether he should pull the trigger. But when he saw a photo of Alvaro's family on the phone and thought of his own wife and child, he ultimately broke the sacred rule of an assassin.
I know where you live. If anything happens to me, my colleagues will come to your house and they will kill your wife and your child in front of you. So when the police ask about me, you are going to tell them that you never saw my face and you never heard my voice. Can I trust you? Yes. Can I trust you? Yes.
By the time Alvaro came to his senses, Jack was already gone. He let out a loud laugh like a man who had just escaped death. Meanwhile, Jack melted into the crowd and called his wife, telling her not to contact him anymore, just to wait for an email. After hanging up, he slipped the phone into a stranger's backpack and walked into an internet cafe where he logged onto a secure website to contact his handler. The woman informed him that due to the chaos in Budapest, their superiors had begun to lose faith in him. Jack firmly replied that he would soon be back and would keep his promise. But if they dared to withhold his payment, then they'd better be ready for war. The woman asked Jack if he needed any help. Jack said he could handle it on his own. At that moment, an email from his wife arrived, and he immediately sent her the hotel link. Upon receiving the message, his wife hurriedly grabbed her suitcase and left the airport. The two met at the hotel. Although she still held some resentment in her heart, seeing the remorseful look in her husband's eyes, she chose to forgive him. Without saying much, Jack quickly began to change his appearance. In the suitcase his wife had brought were the tools necessary for his disguise. She silently stood by, wanting to learn more about her husband's work. Jack didn't stop her, but instead began performing a series of steps. Under her astonished gaze, he transformed into an old man. The two of them went to the airport together. The security staff seemed not to notice them. After saying goodbye to his wife, Jackal left alone. At that moment, Bianca and her partner were also on their way back to headquarters and happened to pass by him. However, after Jack boarded the plane, the flight was delayed and hadn't taken off yet. A short while later, he was surprised to see Bianca and her partner also boarding the plane. It turned out they weren't returning to headquarters. Bianca's superior had received intelligence that the richest man in the world would arrive in Talent in 4 days to launch a new software he had developed, and Jack was certain to be there. Therefore, the superior ordered Bianca to reroute and head to Talent instead. But fate played a cruel joke. Bianca ended up sitting right in front of Jack. After arriving, Jack saw that they had taken the same taxi going in his direction and even checked into the same hotel. As he stepped into his room, Jack suddenly realized that this mission was going to be extremely difficult. While removing his disguise, he began to consider whether he should change the plan. But before he could come up with anything, the doorbell rang. 2 police officers appeared at the door. They said there had been a robbery on the upper floor and they were checking each room. Jack calmly explained that he had just arrived and hadn't noticed anything unusual. After inspecting his passport and finding nothing suspicious, the male officer prepared to leave. However, the female officer felt that something wasn't right. Her intuition told her that the man standing before her was no ordinary person. She asked Jack for his phone number and called it right in front of him. It wasn't until she heard the ringtone ring from the room that she finally let go of her suspicion and left with her colleague. Jack's instincts as a killer told him that this place was no longer safe. He immediately dialed a number. It was the security staff member who had helped him find his phone the day before. Jack had noticed that the young man likely had a different sexual orientation, so he arranged to meet him. His aim was twofold: to find a safe place to stay without arousing suspicion, and to see if this man could be of any help to him. To successfully complete the mission, Jack didn't hesitate to use a bit of seduction. Ironically, one of the world's top assassins now had to rely on his looks to get the job done. To ensure the assassination would go smoothly, Jack broke protocol and arranged a meeting with the woman who was overseeing him. He revealed information about Bianca and her partner and asked the woman to eliminate them. This surprised her. Jack, the infamous assassin, now had to ask someone else for help. Smiling, the woman agreed.
Rudan's arriving on Friday. They're gonna ask me if you're confident it can be done.
Well, you can tell them whatever they want to hear.
Well, I'm also asking for myself.
So what would you like me to tell you?
That you'll deliver. I'm on your side. I was hoping that would be clear by now. I was hoping this could be even more of a collaboration.
I don't collaborate. You won't hear from me till after it's done, and I expect to be paid promptly.
Watching Jackal leave, the woman immediately called for backup. Back at his hideout, Jack continued studying the blueprint. However, what he didn't expect was that his identity had already been exposed. After Bianca and her partner arrived at the Anubis Operation Command Center, their superior, who had been waiting for some time, wasted no time with greetings. He immediately ordered Bianca to work with a sketch artist to draw a portrait of Jackal based on her memory. As soon as the sketch was completed, it was sent to the local police. Not long after, they received a report from a female officer who claimed to have seen a man resembling the sketch at a hotel. Upon receiving this information, Bianca and her partner immediately prepared to head there. But just as they stepped outside, a car sped straight toward them. If Bianca hadn't pulled her partner aside in time, both would have been riddled with bullets. Realizing they were under attack, everyone immediately went into combat mode. With help from the building's security staff, the enemy's car crashed into a flower bed and flipped into a ditch. However, the assassin's intentions were clear. He got out of the vehicle and continued shooting recklessly, but was eventually shot down by Bianca. It was clearly a planned assassination attempt. Fortunately, no one was injured. Still shaken by the gravity of the situation, Bianca quickly got into a vehicle and led the special ops team to the hotel. However, when they stormed in, there was no trace of Jack. It seemed that Jack's decision to leave the hotel the night before had been a wise one. He temporarily moved into Alvaro's house under the guise of being a designer. Jack expressed his desire to visit the inside of the hall in the evening, but Alvaro told him that after tonight's performance, the entire area would be completely sealed off. No one would be allowed in or out without a special permit. Even Alvaro himself didn't know why. Jack understood that he had to act sooner. He immediately told Alvaro that his company was requesting his urgent return that same night. To help Jack fulfill his wish, Alvaro brought him to the hall in the afternoon and handed him his access card so that Jack could enter the staff-only area. Following the instructions on the blueprint, Jack went straight to the door leading to the rooftop. Then, with practiced ease, he located a special key hidden in the wall, which he used to unlock the middle section of the ventilation duct. After carefully surveying the area, Jack quickly returned to the lobby. Alvaro wanted to invite him to dinner, but Jack declined. He had an assassination to carry out. But then an unexpected incident occurred. The backyard of his house caught fire. Jack's brother-in-law had always wanted to buy a bar, so he and Jack's mother-in-law persuaded Jack's wife to take some money from his secret room. But the brother-in-law was insatiably greedy. In addition to taking the cash, he also grabbed the pistol lying next to it. All of this was seen by Jackal. It seemed that the troubles at home had to be put aside. He needed to focus on the mission first. That evening, Jack bid farewell to Alvaro. Though his heart was filled with reluctance, Alvaro could only watch Jack walk away. He never imagined that this gentle-looking, harmless man would eventually take his life. On the island where the richest man in the world resided, the head of security reported that he had received intelligence about MI6's failure to apprehend the assassin in Budapest. He advised the richest man not to go to Talent and instead hold the software launch event online right there on the island. However, after hearing this, the richest man flew into a rage. He had spent an entire year preparing for this event and had invited many prominent figures to Talent. If he didn't show up, wouldn't he become a laughingstock?
Better ridiculous than dead.
Debatable.
The richest man's attitude was exactly what Jack had hoped for. By then, he had already arrived at the venue. Using a disguise, he passed through the security checkpoint with ease. He went to the reception desk and bought a few bottles of mineral water, some bags of nuts, and 4 chocolate bars. Midway through the concert, Jack stood up and left. Out in the hallway, he expertly opened the stairwell door and proceeded to a location he had scouted earlier. He closed the hatch cover and crawled inside to hide in the intermediate space, awaiting the arrival of the richest man in the world. But before that, Jack had removed the cast from his leg, disassembled its parts, and reassembled them into a sniper rifle, which he placed next to him. There were still 2 days and nights left before the launch event. Jack could get plenty of rest. He quickly fell asleep, but horrifying memories surfaced in his mind and startled him awake. It seemed that the events of the past were wounds Jack could never truly forget. Fortunately, he had later met his current wife, the one who brought a bit of warmth into his life. The next morning, while Jack was sharpening a bank card, he suddenly heard footsteps above him. Someone had come to inspect the scene. However, the woman didn't detect that someone was hiding beneath the floor. Bianca and her colleague also arrived at the venue. She handed Jack's portrait to the head of security, hoping it would be of help. What no one expected was that despite the building being sealed off in advance and equipped with the most advanced scanners, Jack had already infiltrated the venue a day earlier and was hiding in the intermediate space. To ensure everyone's safety, a full sweep of the venue was conducted once more. Bianca even brought Jack's clothes for the sniffer dogs. Jack was observing everything, but he showed no signs of worry. After enjoying a chocolate bar, he drifted off to sleep again. This time, there were no painful memories he dreamt of his wife. He remembered the day he had summoned all his courage to ask Emma out for dinner. To his surprise, she said yes, and the two of them naturally got together. As he recalled her beautiful face, Jack fell asleep in tears. The long, endless night finally passed. The day of the software launch had arrived. Jack began his preparations. To reach peak condition, he warmed up his body. Bianca and her colleague also arrived at the venue and ordered another full sweep of the building. Everyone quickly sprang into action. Bianca followed the team up to the rooftop, unknowingly standing directly above Jack. But she noticed nothing unusual beneath her feet. Jack let out a quiet sigh of relief. The richest man in the world was on his way, and the guests were arriving one after another under the strict protection of security forces. As the host worked to energize the crowd, Jack prepared to move into his sniping position. Hearing a security guard walking by, he pushed open the steel panel in the intermediate layer, retrieved his weapon, and silently moved behind the guard, taking him down swiftly. Then, with a flick of his sharpened bank card, he slit the throat of another guard in an instant. By this time, the host had already invited the richest man in the world onto the stage. Jack raised his sniper rifle. In front of the television screen, the mastermind behind the scenes and the female supervisor were watching nervously. But assassinating the richest man in the world was no easy task. The bulletproof glass alone was enough to stop any shot. What Jack needed was to wait for the perfect moment when his target would drop his guard and lean forward. However, the appearance of another sniper disrupted Jack's plan. He quickly reloaded, intending to fire another shot, but the target had already vanished. The bodyguards surrounded the richest man in the world, leaving Jack with no clear shot. Bianca also discovered Jack's location and swiftly mobilized forces to capture him. Realizing that the plan had failed, Jack decided to flee, blending into the crowd to escape. Although the police tried to seal the exits, the chaotic crowd gave them no chance. In the end, Jack managed to get away. Seeing the police cars rushing in, Jack calmly walked into another street, thinking he had escaped. But then a voice called his name from behind. Turning around, he saw Alvaro. At first, Jack ignored him, but Alvaro chased after him, forcing Jack to confront his old friend. Seeing the gentle and hopeful look in Alvaro's eyes, Jack, fearing his identity would be exposed, made the heartbreaking decision to kill him. He placed Alvaro's lifeless body in a roadside crevice and quickly left. That was the price of loving a wild horse. As for Bianca, would she be able to catch Jack? That would depend entirely on her next move. The story then flashes back to Afghanistan in 2013. If you didn't look carefully, you might not notice the two men hidden in the rocky desert. At that time, Jack was still a member of a secret special forces unit and also the most skilled sniper on the team. Working with a spotter, his mission was to assassinate the leader of a terrorist organization.
Target inside compound. Range 1,400.
1,400.
Wind 0.5. Send it.
It's not him.
Send it. Let's get the fuck out of
No,
here.
his beard's white.
No one cares, Doug, and no one gives a fuck. Just drop him so we can count this.
It's not him, Gary.
Target out of you.
It wasn't the target.
He's fucking gone. How long are we gonna have to wait?
As long as it takes.
Just as both men were parched with thirst, the target finally appeared in the courtyard. After calculating the distance and wind speed, Jack held his breath and pulled the trigger. The mission was successfully completed and the two quickly withdrew from the scene. This showed that Jack was even then an extremely patient and ruthless man. As a reward, the captain gave him an expensive bottle of liquor and made a special exception to allow him to drink in the barracks. He even took the whole team to the nearest city to celebrate. This very incident changed Jackal's life. While Gary was joking around with him, a man accidentally bumped into Gary. Just as an argument was about to break out, the man didn't resort to violence. Instead, he made a proposal.
Can I buy you gentlemen a drink? Yeah, another round here. One for me.
Little did Jack know everything was part of this man's plan. His true intention was to strike up a conversation with Jack.
What if I told you a friend of mine would pay 10,000 British pounds, maybe even 15, for you to take care of a problem he has?
What kind of problem? He wants someone killed, Gaz. Is that right?
Well, you kill people for the army. What's the difference? Except you'd be getting a lot more money.
You don't go to prison killing people for the army.
My friend is a very important man. There would be no risk.
There's always risk.
My friend might go up to 20 for each of you. It's my card.
At that moment, Jack showed his cautious nature. A few days later, a man under tight protection by two bodyguards suddenly dropped dead from a bullet hole in his head. The two bodyguards frantically searched for the attacker, unaware that the shot had been fired from a building a full kilometer away. Calmly, Jack stashed away his sniper rifle and with Gary got into a getaway vehicle they had prepared in advance. That single shot not only earned them £200,000 but also won enthusiastic praise from their client. The man expressed hope that they would continue working for him, with prices of course open to negotiation. However, Gary still had 6 years left of military service and Jackal had 3. If they were ever discovered to have deserted, their fate would be worse than death. With that, both of them left without hesitation. That encounter planted the seed of Jackal's dream to become an assassin. Back to the present. Due to a failed mission to assassinate the richest man in the world, Jackal was now on the run. Investigators discovered traces of urine left in the ventilation system and found the sniper rifle used in the crime. Though they managed to retrieve Jackal's fingerprints and DNA from the evidence, there was no information about him in the database. Bianca had no choice but to place her hopes on Dagon's file. But to her shock, Dagon's records were protected with a clearance level even higher than top secret. Viewing them required direct authorization from upper command. This only strengthened Bianca's belief that Dagon and his team had done something the military and the Ministry of Defense were desperate to keep hidden.
Do we really still have no idea who this man is? We have his fingerprints and DNA.
There's no record of him. Anywhere.
So the E-fit is basically all we've got.
No, we have Alexander Duggan.
The dead sniper?
Something is not right about Duggan and his unit. First off, Duggan's army files are strapped too.
That must be a mistake.
No mistake.
I need to see the file on Duggan and his unit.
It'll be a very bureaucratic, which is to say tiresome process.
Duggan was an outstanding sniper. The best.
Yes, was.
He's the only man on record capable of making that shot.
But he's dead.
He went to Afghanistan and never came back. But there's no body. There could be information in that file that will help us.
Let me see what I can do.
But what no one expected was that Bianca's suspicion was correct. Jackal, the top assassin, was in fact Dagon. This time Jackal's team received a new mission. It was reported that a high-ranking member of a terrorist organization would be attending a wedding. Their objective was to capture the target alive. After Jackal and Gary set up their ambush, the rest of the team arrived at the scene. Initially, they planned to negotiate peacefully and detain the target without bloodshed. However, due to a language barrier, the situation quickly reached a stalemate. As tensions escalated, Jack noticed someone on a nearby hill preparing to snipe. To protect his teammates, he was forced to open fire. The sudden gunshot turned the wedding into a battlefield. The team leader ordered everyone to open fire. With overwhelming firepower, it was no longer a battle, it became a one-sided massacre. When the gunfire ceased and silence returned, Gary realized it had only been a normal wedding. The target was never there. Jackal and Gary rushed forward, but it was already too late. After throwing a grenade, the team leader led the others into the courtyard, shooting indiscriminately at anyone in sight. It was only then that the team leader also realized it had been just an ordinary wedding. But in order to cover up the atrocity of massacring civilians before leaving, he called in an airstrike, turning the entire wedding site to ashes, erasing the evidence completely. The others laughed loudly, but the scene they had just witnessed left a haunting shadow in the hearts of Jackal and Gary.
I wasn't clean. I was a mess.
Gary's words saved his life. As the car disappeared from view, Jackal silently made a decision in his heart. This was what the higher-ups were trying to cover up. Time shifted back to the present. MI6 had issued a global arrest warrant for Jack. Jackal's brother-in-law happened to see the news broadcast and immediately called his sister over. Pointing at the portrait on the screen, he confidently declared that it was Jackal. After seeing the report, Jackal's wife panicked and ran outside. She called her husband, telling him she had seen the news. Knowing he had been recognized, Jackal warned his wife to make sure her brother never told anyone about this. That was the only way to keep the family safe. His wife, frightened, worried the police would come for them. Jack reassured her that the police didn't know his true identity and there was no reason for them to come as long as her brother kept his mouth shut. He added that he would be home soon. That one sentence made his wife finally realize her husband's true identity. For the first time in her life, she was furious with Jack. Danger was closing in on Jackal. Bianca went to the prison to visit Larry and apologized for causing the deaths of his daughter and wife, hoping he could forgive her. But if apologies were enough, what would be the need for the police? Larry hated Bianca to the bone. Unable to get revenge, he wanted her to live in guilt and torment. In front of Bianca, Larry ended his life. Bianca, already devastated, was thrown into deeper shock. Fortunately, her colleague comforted her and brought good news. They finally had access to the classified file. After signing a confidentiality agreement, Bianca opened the final document and learned everything about Dagon. The file clearly recorded that he was officially dead. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Her instincts told her Dagon was Jackal, but she couldn't understand how he had managed to escape death. It turned out that after witnessing an innocent person being killed, Jack came up with a bold idea. On the way back, he urgently asked his team to stop the vehicle. The others were puzzled as Jack anxiously looked ahead. He had noticed a bright spot on a mound of dirt not far away and feared there might be a bomb buried there. Trusting their comrade, everyone became alert. Jack volunteered to go check it out. The captain ordered someone to accompany him, but Jack insisted that Gary go with him despite Gary's complaints. Jack remained silent and moved forward. Little did he know he was actually saving Gary's life. Under the tense gazes of the others, Jack slowly advanced using a metal detector. As he neared the mound, he turned off the device and pulled out a screwdriver. Don't underestimate this tool. Jack often used it to calibrate his sniper rifle. The screwdriver and Jack's palm had achieved a kind of unity between man and weapon with a sensitivity far beyond any detector. Carefully, Jack used the screwdriver to probe the ground but found nothing unusual. As he got closer, he finally sighed in relief. It turned out that the object behind the mound was just a child's bicycle. Realizing it was a false alarm, the captain ordered everyone to keep moving. But no one noticed that Jack had quietly taken out his phone. After confirming that everyone was back in the vehicle, he pressed a button. Gary, not understanding what was happening, ran back toward his teammates, terrified and searching for the culprit. It seemed this had all been part of Jack's plan. However, because of something Gary had said earlier, Jack chose not to harm him.
We need to go.
Go where?
They can't find us.
Since then, the military lost a special forces soldier and the world gained a top-tier assassin. The name Jack came from the truck that New used to drive. Because of his previous failure, Jack was eager to prove his capabilities and also to retire with a bounty of 100 million. This time he had prepared thoroughly. Since the world's richest man had fled to his private island, Jack had to follow him there. At that moment, the woman assigned to monitor him suddenly appeared and warned him that the river software would be released in 48 hours. If the mission wasn't completed within that time, both of them would be in serious trouble.
I'm not here on holiday.
After saying that, Jack turned and walked away decisively. That was the confidence of Jack. It turned out he had just been observing the surroundings of the island. He discovered that the security system around the world's richest man was extremely tight. Any vessel attempting to approach the island had to undergo strict inspections, and there were drones constantly patrolling the area. He knew that the world's richest man loved swimming, so the only opportunity for an assassination would be at sea. However, stabilizing a sniper rifle on the water was a major challenge. After some research, Jack suddenly came up with a solution, using a camera stabilizer system. With the plan set, he immediately went to the bank to retrieve the custom sniper rifle that Norman had made for him. But before he could act, Jack had to put out a fire that had broken out in his own backyard. Under the cover of night, he returned home hoping to explain everything to his wife. But it seemed she was deliberately avoiding him. Jack had no choice but to go to his son's room, where he quietly expressed his love for the boy. This scene was being watched by his wife through a security camera. Even though she already knew her husband was an assassin, the love he showed for her and their son was undeniably genuine. Moved by this, the wife went to the living room and waited for Jack, deciding to give him a chance to explain.
You kill people for money.
Yeah, I kill people for money.
Say it again.
I kill people for money.
Listen to yourself and say it again.
I kill people for money.
Say it again.
I kill people for money.
Say it again.
I kill people for...
I kill people for money! Is that what you want to hear? Is that enough? Is it enough?
It's not. But now we can have a conversation.
At last, the two of them were able to sit down and have a serious conversation. Looking at his calm and composed wife, Jack opened up for the first time. He told her how deeply he loved her and that he was preparing to leave the assassin's life behind. But he had to complete one final mission. In just 24 more hours, they could start a happy life together. Though those words broke her heart, she knew there was nothing she could do. She could only forgive him. With their family matters finally resolved, Jack was ready to fully commit to the mission. But just as he was about to gear up, his troublesome brother-in-law suddenly showed up. After learning that his brother-in-law was a top-tier assassin, instead of calling the police, he contacted the local crime boss. He wanted to introduce Jack to the gang so he could do jobs for them and make more money. Jack's wife was terrified when she found out. She knew her brother all too well. He was incompetent and irresponsible. She feared this would ruin Jack's plan to retire for good. So she told Jack everything. After learning about the situation, Jackal wasn't worried at all. Instead, he gently comforted his wife and told her not to worry. It's just a mafia boss, he said. To me, he's nothing. Jack then sought out his brother-in-law and proactively suggested meeting the crime boss. Thinking his brother-in-law had finally come to his senses, the brother-in-law happily booked a table at a restaurant and left in high spirits. But he had no idea Jack already had a plan of his own. Jack went to the dock, rented a yacht from a friend, and loaded his equipment onto the boat. Meanwhile, at the restaurant, the two men were still waiting for Jack, who had yet to show up. This made the brother-in-law increasingly anxious. As the boss began to lose his temper, he tried to calm him down by pouring more drinks. But moments later, when blood suddenly soaked the tablecloth, everyone was stunned. One of the boss's men collapsed without warning. It was then that the brother-in-law realized how terrifying his brother-in-law truly was. Jack had done this not only to eliminate the threat, but also to test his equipment. Once the test was successful, he was finally ready to carry out the assassination.
You're an artist, Norman.
At the same time, Bianca was still investigating Dagon's file. From the records, she discovered that Dagon's former superior was still alive. So she went to the hospital to question him about Dagon. But upon learning that Bianca was from MI6, the man bluntly asked her to leave. However, Bianca refused to go. It's unclear what Gary said to her, but when she returned, Bianca met with her superior and told him she had obtained new information about Dagon. Bianca knew that Dagon always operated alone, but he had someone very close to him, Gary, Dagon's former observer. So if Dagon is still alive, Gary might not be dead either. However, the higher-ups believe this is just speculation, not a lead. The woman has decided to halt the investigation into Dagon. She believes it's unnecessary to mobilize too many resources for someone presumed dead. It's better to focus their limited energy on capturing Jack. If Bianca insists on continuing the investigation, the woman will strip her of her agent status. This news was a shock to Bianca but a golden opportunity for Jack. He sought out his friend again, asking him to take him out to sea for fishing. Thanks to the power of money, the two of them approached the island where the richest man in the world resides. But to complete his mission smoothly, Jack was forced to kill his longtime close friend. Afterward, he disguised the body to make it look like his friend was simply asleep. At that moment, the cold-blooded Jackal emerged once again. Regaining his composure, Jackal put on his gear and assembled the rifle stand. This time, he still brought only 4 bullets. After securing the sniper rifle, he connected the 2 parts together, quickly loaded a bullet into the chamber and aimed toward the island. Without hesitation, he pulled the trigger. Upon seeing the bullet hit the bullseye, Jack finally let out a sigh of relief. Now all he needed to do was wait for the target to appear. Suddenly, the device issued a warning. Looking through the scope, he saw it was a drone approaching. Jackal calmly covered the sniper rifle and picked up the fishing rod, pretending to be fishing. In the surveillance room, a bodyguard spotted a familiar yacht about 3 kilometers away. The captain, deeming it non-threatening for the moment, only ordered his team to keep a close watch without taking any action. The richest man in the world began his usual swimming session, heading out to sea with a group of bodyguards protecting him. Seeing this, Jackal quickly changed into his prepared outfit, skillfully loaded a bullet into the chamber, and focused intently on tracking the target. Due to the long distance and the instability of the boat, he had to wait for the right opportunity. But just as the target entered the shooting range, a sudden roar broke the silence. A jet ski was speeding toward him. Jackal had no choice but to deal with it first. After confirming the rider was dead, he immediately turned the rifle back, reloaded a bullet, and prepared to fire again. But another warning sounded. A drone appeared in the sky. Fortunately, he had prepared for this, pulling out a jammer that caused the drone to crash. However, this also exposed his plan.
Sniper rifle.
Hearing the captain's shout, the bodyguard on the jet ski quickly shielded the richest man in the world, while the others pushed him into the water for safety. Yet Jackal remained unhurried. He held his breath and watched the surface. No matter who it was, they would have to breathe. Calmly, Jackal began a silent countdown. Unfortunately, this shot was blocked by a bodyguard. Still, Jackal didn't panic. As long as the target remained underwater, his final bullet would finish the job. The richest man in the world realized he could no longer rely on anyone. He would have to save himself. He immediately dove underwater, trying to swim quickly toward the shore. But how could he escape Jackal's eyes? Jackal calmly stared at the water's surface, predicting the moment the target would resurface. And with that, Jackal completed the impossible mission. The target was dead, and what awaited next was another life or death pursuit. After the bullet struck the richest man in the world, Jack quickly fled the scene. However, during his escape, he encountered a police checkpoint. Pretending to cooperate, Jack waited until the officers were distracted, then suddenly accelerated and rammed straight into them. What followed was an intense pursuit by multiple police vehicles. But as a top-tier assassin, killing wasn't Jack's only talent. His escape skills were just as formidable. Jack expertly used the terrain to his advantage, weaving through the police blockade, speeding down a slope, and charging into a residential area, kicking off a high-stakes chase through the streets. Despite the police using every tactic they had, they were unable to stop Jack's vehicle. Even when faced with a hail of bullets, Jack skillfully swerved to dodge the fatal shots. In the end, he sped away, leaving the police behind in a cloud of dust and smoke. Meanwhile, the boyfriend of the world's richest man held an extravagant funeral for him and sorrowfully announced that the launch of River would be postponed indefinitely. Jack's retirement mission had finally come to an end. As for Bianca, she discovered that the mafia boss's assassination carried out from a boat a kilometer away closely resembled Jackal's methods. Determined to investigate, Bianca planned to go to Spain to pursue the case, but her superiors stopped her. They believed too many organizations were involved and didn't want to get entangled in a personal vendetta between gangs. Disagreeing, Bianca immediately submitted her resignation. As she left for the elevator, she ran into the foreign minister. It turned out that River's delay benefited many people, and the foreign minister was no exception. While congratulating her superior, he also took notice of Bianca's unusually active investigation and secretly wanted to eliminate her. However, her superior stopped him, saying Bianca had already resigned and was no longer a threat. At this moment, Jack unexpectedly got into a car accident and his vehicle flipped over. At the same time, his wife's older brother was causing trouble again. After receiving a call from the police station, Jack's wife rushed over to bail her brother out, scolded him harshly, and demanded that he stay away from gangs. When Jack regained consciousness, he was helped by a kind truck driver. After the driver brought Jack to a safe place, he intended to call the police, but Jack immediately pulled out a gun to stop him and hijacked the truck. This scene was accidentally witnessed by nearby residents who quickly called the police. Jack had no time to worry. He drove the truck away in a hurry. He didn't stop until he reached a forest. After quickly bandaging his wounds, he set the truck on fire and pushed it off a cliff. Jack deliberately wore sunglasses to conceal the coldness in his eyes and wore a wedding ring to pretend to be married, hoping to lower strangers' suspicions. He then approached an elderly couple who were camping, faking a hypertension episode and claiming that one of his arms was paralyzed and he couldn't drive. After briefly observing him, the elderly couple agreed to drive him to the nearest hospital. Following Jack's directions, they drove for a while, but the old man eventually realized something was off. The trip that should have taken only 15 minutes had already taken 30. Realizing their suspicion, Jack dropped the act and pointed his gun at the old man, forcing him to keep driving. By this time, Bianca had returned to her family and was enjoying a peaceful life. Her superior unexpectedly showed up and declared that he had the resources to help Bianca continue her investigation. However, due to certain special circumstances, they needed to avoid government scrutiny. Without hesitation, Bianca agreed. Now the pursuit of Jack was no longer part of her job. It had become a personal battle of wits between the two of them. Bianca wanted a clear winner and loser. Since the mission was confidential, only her partner accompanied her to Spain for the investigation. This trip was certain to be a one-way journey. Meanwhile, Jack quickly noticed that the elderly couple he was with had encountered a police checkpoint. Luckily, their car was at the end of the line, so while no one was paying attention, Jack ordered the old man to turn onto a small road on the right. After a brief hesitation, the old man complied. On the way, the old man asked to stop for a smoke. Jack got out and smoked a cigarette with him. The old man tried to negotiate with Jack. He knew Jack wouldn't let them live, but didn't want to miss even the slightest chance of survival. Jack found himself conflicted. He rarely spoke of his parents, good-hearted people who, like this couple, had once helped the wrong person. Moved by compassion, Jack made his decision when he got back in the car. He told the couple they would rest there for the night. Unexpectedly, the old woman suddenly stabbed him in the back with a knife. Jack winced in pain, pulled the knife out, and looked at her in disbelief. Afraid that Jack would retaliate, the old man lunged at him. The cramped space of the car gave Jack little room to react, and the old man managed to pin him down. Jack was completely enraged. He fought back and stabbed the old man. Seeing her husband stabbed, the old woman was overwhelmed with regret. And so Jack sent the couple to the afterlife, but that had never been his original intention. Afterward, Jack called his wife, wanting to invite her to move with him to a beautiful new city. Though he was a top assassin who could endure one shock after another, the moment he heard his wife's voice, Jackal couldn't hold back his tears. In that moment, he realized how much he truly hated a life of killing. His wife heard the vulnerability in his voice and gently told him to come home so they could talk. Jack was in a hurry to return. After packing up, he blew up the elderly couple's car and then took a bus home. Meanwhile, Bianca made a major breakthrough when she went to the local police station to investigate the murder of the crime boss. She discovered that it was Jack's brother-in-law who had reported the crime. The police mentioned that his sister had married a young tycoon. Bianca recognized the clue, followed the trail, and found Jack's home address. Bianca and her partner immediately went there, but Jack wasn't home. So she lay in wait. By evening, Jack still hadn't shown up. Instead, his wife took their son away in a taxi. Bianca thought Jack was being overly cautious and had not come to pick them up himself. In truth, his wife no longer wanted to live with a man so steeped in crime. She suppressed her pain and left with their son. Not long after, Jack disguised himself as a valet and drove off in an unlucky stranger's car to head home and pick up his family. Bianca finally saw her enemy. When Jack entered the villa, she and her partner took immediate action. Jack returned home, but his wife and son were gone. He realized that his wife didn't want to leave with him. At that moment, Jensen called. Out of admiration for Jack, she warned him that the client clearly intended to go back on their word and had already sent an assassin to Spain to eliminate them both. Fortunately, Jensen had escaped first, preventing the killer from finding them. Upon receiving the news, Jack immediately packed up his belongings and prepared to leave. But just as he slipped into the secret room, his brother-in-law, noticing the house was dark, curiously entered to investigate. He was shot dead by Bianca. Unintentionally, Bianca helped Jack get rid of his troublesome brother-in-law. The gunshot put Jack on high alert. He instantly sensed danger. Bianca had no idea that she was facing her enemy through a transparent mirror. Jack observed, assessed the number of enemies, and attached a laser sight to his gun. By the time Bianca's partner noticed the red dot aimed at her head, it was already too late. He tried to pull her out of the way, but he was no match for Jack's bullet. Bianca's partner was killed.
No one else needs to die. I just want to know who you are. Who you working for? Why do you do it, Duncan?
Why do you?
Because I like to win.
So do I.
Both Jack and Bianca were trying to win. When it came to killing skills, Bianca knew she was no match for Jack's speed. So she planned to use the whereabouts of Jack's wife as a bargaining chip. But Jack would never agree to cooperate with anyone. A shot rang out. Bianca fell utterly defeated. Jack hurried off to find his wife, but she was determined to leave and refused to answer his calls. Jack stood frozen in shock. Just then, a car came speeding straight at him. In the end, everything came to a close. Bianca's superior was promoted to director. Osita came to congratulate her. Due to good behavior, Osita was finally granted freedom, but his ties with the U.S. remained intact. Sometime later, a battered and bruised Jack stepped out of a car and arrived at a rendezvous point with Jensen. Since the client had gone back on their word, Jack was determined to take revenge. Jensen handed him a newspaper with a photo of the next target. But Jack only cared about his beloved wife. He decided to find her first, then deal with revenge. The day of the Jackal Season 1 ends here. Season 2 has been confirmed and is expected to air in 2026. Let's look forward to Jackal's journey of vengeance. That's the end of today's story. Thank you for watching. What did you think of the series? If you enjoyed it, please give me a like and subscribe to the channel.